Man has created some beautiful things. Sculptures, paintings, vases, and occasionally the odd building. But such beautiful things are few by comparison with the ugliness for what he's been responsible for. That quote is by Joseph Wood Crutch about the Grand Canyon in 1958. Hello listeners, welcome to the Atlantic Current podcast. As always, I'm here with Vince Martin from Wall Street in Maine, and I'm Tull, the infamous Tull from the Irish Politics newsletter. Hello, Vincent.
Hello. Infamous is the right word. Last week we were doing an episode, an emergency pod, as we call it, on a tweet you sent out about an Irish politician, Lynn Boylan. Now, you've done it again. You have gone on Twitter and you induced from Niall Collins, I think it's kind of the yawn heard around Europe, right? The most viral yawn in the history of Irish politics, perhaps.
Yes.
Him just showing utter disinterest in the scandal at Aughinish Alumina, which we covered back in episode 53 and which we're going to come back to today.
Now, let me correct you there for a second, Vincent, because in fairness to Niall Collins, I don't think it's disinterest. I think it's a lack of interest in what everybody else has to say about the place, to be perfectly honest.
Fair. Okay. That's not really much better for a politician, though.
No, it's not. See, Niall Collins is the TD for the area Aughinish is in. Now, we did a podcast on that recently, about 4 weeks ago. It got a good response. People liked it a lot. We were the only people in the Irish media sphere that was actually willing to talk about it quite openly without being politically correct about it.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think anybody has spoken about it so bluntly as we have, and it needs to be said. Okay, yeah. And we don't claim to be an unbiased podcast. Okay?
No.
Listen back to our Trump episodes, people.
Yeah, or anytime Sinn Féin comes up.
Yes. Okay. Listen back to our Lynn Boylan episode, perhaps. But Niall Collins went on RTE radio yesterday. A bit of context here, Vincent, for any of our new listeners. There's two strands to this Aughinish story. One is domestically and the environmental damage it's doing to the area. And the second is the international one, where its shipments of alumina are going to Russia, St. Petersburg in Russia. They're sailing out the Foynes Estuary, up the west coast of Ireland, past the watchful ghosts of the British Empire, into the Baltic, and dumping their cargo there that's been turned into all manner of terrible things. That hasn't been definitively proven one way or the other, according to the politicians.
But there is a lot of evidence that alumina is winding up in the supply chain for Russian weapons, which they are in turn using against Ukraine.
Yes, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence.
Absolutely,
There's a report out commissioned by the Irish government on exactly what's been going on there. And the report is expected to say, in typical Irish fashion, yes, it's going to Russia, but we can't really know for certain what's going on there. But as we said before, they're not making tinfoil hats over there. And it should be pointed out that the shipments to St. Petersburg, to Russia, have actually doubled since the microscope has been put on Aughinish. So from the outside, if you were a political analyst from the United States, or from the Wall Street Journal, who likes to point the finger at Ireland every so often, this looks like what it's doing. It's saying on the tin,
And this is a case where people around the world have occasionally pointed the finger at Ireland, particularly over the last couple months. Has been brought to attention by some independent researchers under the umbrella of NAFO. And there are occasional articles in the American press in places like Australia, on the continent, of people going, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't look good. This does not look good that an Irish plant is supplying Russian factories.
They're war materials, okay? And I think I might have said on the podcast, or I wrote, that when this report comes out, it's going to be a fudge, okay? They're going to say, right, all this stuff is going there, but we don't know exactly what they're doing with it. It should be pointed out, Caelan Robertson has managed to get a sample from Aughinish and is currently in the process of having it independently analysed and compared to the weapons that have been raining down on Ukraine from Russia to find out, do the samples match up?
Yeah.
Okay. The basic science of this is the chemical composition will be able to tell you pretty definitively what part of the world is from, the same way that you're able to tell, what diamonds are from South Africa or Brazil or whatever the case may be.
What's quite funny about that is that in our first episode, you said that Caolan was more likely to get the truth than was the Irish government. One of the excuses, if you read coverage of this over the last few weeks from government ministers and the like, is that they can't confirm it because they can't get boots on the ground themselves in Russia or in Ukraine, right? They're not allowed to go inspect a Russian factory or track all these things. There is something very modern about the fact that Caolan seems to have access to much better information than does the Irish government.
I've been knocking around politics far too long, Vincent, right? And I'm a deeply, deeply simple person now. I've a sneaky suspicion that the government are going to release this report, and a couple of days later, a couple of weeks later, Caolan's going to get his report back and it's going to say something completely different. You know, that's the trap the government have set for themselves.
Right.
There's a bit of consternation that the report has been sent to the EU to look at before it's been released to the Irish public. That's rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. A lot of people up the wrong way. And anybody that has a gripe against the EU now are going to say, well, the EU are calling the shots here, not the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah.
So now back to Niall Collins, Minister of State at the Department of Agriculture. He's responsible for the marine, which is quite important considering the Shannon estuary is in his back garden. So if there was any ecological damage or harm to come to that area because of, you know, what's going on there, he'd be responsible for the cleanup.
Yeah. And we talked about this in episode 53, and you can see the pictures in the show notes. If you look at Aughinish from above, it shows why you opened with that quote about the ugliness that man can create, because it is just a massive pile of filthy red mud that is just surrounded by water. And you talked about, you know, if something fails, it's going to be catastrophic, and you don't need to be a scientist. Anyone with two eyes looks and goes, oh crap, if something leaks here.
Yeah, the pollution that it would cause would do untold damage to the area. Yeah. And the farmers that I've been speaking to in the area, they'll tell you this pollution has been going on, as we said, from, you know, the late 90s, the early 90s. Yeah. Okay. It's a sight to behold, and it's a tragic sight to behold. And we said there's two strands to this. The other third strand is the jobs in the area.
Right.
Okay, so there's an estimate there ending up to 1,900 jobs. There's 475, 500 directly employed, and another 1,400, 1,500 are directly employed in logistics and materials and that kind of stuff. So, look, it's not an insignificant number. People are worried about their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
But it should be pointed out, okay, this has to be stressed. Nobody's talking about shutting the place down. They're talking about just not sending stuff to Russia. Nobody wants to see the place closed in Irish politics, the Irish government. The thinking is, you know, we'll pay the environmental bill further down the line, as is always the case. That's not unique to Ireland. That happens all over the world as well. We need the jobs in the area. We'll foot the clean-up bill in 20 years' time, perhaps.
Yeah, when I'm not running for re-election.
Yes, exactly. Entirely. It's the next generation's problem. We're a species very guilty of that in a political sense, aren't we?
Yeah, that is, as you said. As an American, I can agree with you 100%. That is not unique to Ireland by any stretch. No,
it's a terrible situation for everybody involved. You know, for the people of Ukraine, the farmers down there that are suffering from the pollution that is going on there, and for the people that are in fear of their jobs. It is a terrible situation. But Niall Collins is the politician, the local politician representing the area. He's popping up everywhere. He's went on RTE radio yesterday. And this is what kicked off the yawn that was heard all around Europe. He accused the media of running a misinformation campaign against Aughinish alumina on RTE radio. Okay. He also claimed the Ukrainian president had overstated his concerns about exports from the Irish plant. Now, I mean, overstated? That's a bit of an understatement, to be perfectly honest. I think Zelensky was incredibly diplomatic, but he left no room for doubt that, you know, Ireland's indirectly arming Russia.
Yeah.
Okay. Collins said there was no evidence and no proof that the alumina that leaves the Limerick facility ends up in what's been described as the Russian military complex. I have strong feelings on that. Previously, politicians have come out and said, you know, the alumina has been used in mobile phones and all that, but it's not been used in mobile phones at all.
Again, they're also saying, well, we can't get anybody into Russia to prove it. We can't run these tests. It's just a way to throw your hands up, saying, oh, we can't do anything about it because we can't prove it. You need to kind of move your evidentiary standard down a little bit rather than say we can't do the impossible, so we can't do anything. I think is kind of a silly statement. But the other aspect of that too, if they're saying, oh, well, nothing from Aughinish goes into the supply chain for weapons. Well, Russia needs X tons of alumina every year.
Yeah.
If they're getting Y tons from Aughinish, whatever that number is, that also frees up their remaining supply to go into the weapons supply chain. It's almost irrelevant whether or not an actual shipment of alumina, where that ends up in Russia. The point is that if you are contributing to their supply chain in general, almost by definition, you're contributing to their weapons supply chain, because this is what countries at war do. Countries prioritize their supply chain for weapons. So you're making their access to alumina for weapons greater, whether or not, a certain missile has content produced in Ireland or wherever. It seems across the board rather disingenuous, to put it mildly.
So the numbers, you were wondering about the tonnage there, Vincent. So there was 90,000 tons in May. Okay, that's a lot. 80,000 tons in April. And since January, they've been, it went from 60 to 70 to 80 to 90. They've been ramping up all the time, and they're ramping up all the time for the simple reason is they're afraid they're going to get cut off any day now, and they need enough of the material into Russia as possible. That's the only explanation, right?
You don't think mobile phone sales have jumped 50% in Russia in the first quarter of the year?
No, I definitely don't. I do not. I mean, any reasonable analyst looking at the hard numbers would tell you that also. I mean,
yeah,
the only thing Russia are producing en masse is missiles, their components. Yeah. Everything else is restricted. At the moment in Russia, you cannot fix your car properly because they don't have the parts. All their spare raw materials are going into weapons and nothing else.
Right. Yeah, and that gets to my point. You have more spare materials for weapons if you are getting materials for your regular supply chain. If you're sending alumina into Russia, you are directly or indirectly contributing to weapons production. I think it's very, very difficult to argue against that.
It is, but politicians will try and argue. We've known politics for a long time.
Yep.
Politicians will try and argue the toss against you anyway. But there's actually a historical analogy here. In World War II, Sweden was very famously a neutral country, and at the time, their debates raged also about sending steel to Germany. Some of the arguments from the politicians in Sweden at the time were saying, we don't know if they're ending up in missiles. We've no way of proving that.
Right.
Or bombs at the time, as it was, not missiles. So it's a very disingenuous argument. But, again, I'll go back to Niall as a politician. He represents the area. If he doesn't come out to bat for these people in Aughinish, these Russians in Aughinish, he potentially loses, we said 1,900 people directly and indirectly employed. Well, that's 1,900 votes. He's losing his seat if he loses those votes.
It's a lot of jobs, and then it's their effect on the local economy as well, right? 1,900 jobs go away. Well, pubs close and restaurants close and everything else. We talked about that in episode 53. We've seen this exact story in areas like that in America. Factory goes under and the town is crushed. So I am sympathetic a little bit.
Well, I'm guessing those factories in the United States weren't supplying weapons to Russia, though, were they?
No. The one that we discussed up in Virginia makes bologna. It's like deli ham and stuff. So no, not nearly the same geopolitical significance. We'll say that.
No, that's the international strand there that we were just touching on. But something stuck out to me, what Niall said yesterday, Niall Collins, and I'm quoting, what the workers are keen to point out, and I'm keen to point out on their behalf, is that there has been no law, regulation, condition of license, or EU sanction that has been broken by the Aughinish plant. And they've been subjected to a campaign of misinformation by some within the media and indeed by some within the political environment. I think he's talking about me there. The political environment. I wrote an article that went viral called The Killing Fields of Aughinish.
Right. Yep.
Maybe that's aimed at me. I don't know. Now, the problem with Niall's statement there is that he said no law, no regulations, no condition of license or sanction has been broken by the Aughinish plant. That is simply not true. Okay. In 2002, they leaked 500,000 litres of toxic fluid into the river channel. Now, my question there is, how did he not know that? Okay. He's accusing people of spreading misinformation. Who's spreading misinformation now?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
That fluid's extremely alkaline, probably killed a load of fish. The factory was fined, so they were found guilty and fined. of committing an environmental damage to the River Shannon, and Niall Collins came on the radio yesterday and said otherwise.
But again, that's another argument that is disingenuous, because he can sit there and go, oh, well, these shipments in particular are not violating sanctions. I'm not sure that many people are arguing that they are violating sanctions. What people are arguing for is that new sanctions need to be put in. More stringent sanctions need to put in. The Irish government needs to do something to prevent these shipments, right? Saying, oh, they're not breaking the law, or whatever it is. There's a lot of people going, yeah, that's the problem. There is no law against this. People want Micheál Martin and the government to put in a law, to put in sanctions, or to have the EU expand their sanctions to include this. Saying that they're not doing anything wrong right now is not an argument for saying, well, there's nothing we can do.
Yes. Niall is right. Legally, they've done nothing wrong in terms of shipping anything to Russia, but he was wrong about saying that they haven't done anything in regards to pollution and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They have polluted River Shannon. We said it the last time on our last podcast that the allegations laid out by the farmers are quite strenuous. They've been documented since the early noughties, not by Tull McAdoo or the Irish Politics newsletter, but by RTE, by the Irish Examiner, by the Irish Times. What's been going on in Aughinish has been called out by journalists since the year 2000.
Yeah.
Okay? And for Niall Collins to get on the radio and say, nothing's ever happened down there, that's just simply not true. It's simply not true. And when I asked him to correct the record about what he said on RTE, I said Aughinish polluted the Shannon estuary with 500,000 litres of toxic materials. He gave the yawn face. He gave me a yawn emoji. And I went, that's a pretty dumb thing to do.
In multiple ways, yeah. As a human being and particularly as a politician.
It was a pretty bloody dumb thing to do, I think kind of showed a little bit of contempt for what people are worried about. He clearly is not clued into social media and the damage it's going to do to him and his party, nationally and internationally. And quite frankly, he looks a bit of a bore, a bit of a tick, a bit of a fellow without any kind of cop on, Yeah. Yeah, and he did it twice, He said, Yawn, buy another blue tick, a verification badge like you're someone who knows what you're talking about, which he misspelled terribly. His grammar is absolutely terrible. His grammar's worse than mine. So currently, as we speak, his yawn emoji, the one that's been heard around Europe, has been viewed over 300,000 times, and there's been nearly 1,000 replies to him on X. From
how many likes?
There was 46 likes.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with the dynamics of Twitter/X, that's called a ratio, and you have many more comments than likes. And 20-1 is really a huge number by Twitter standards. When that few people are supporting what you're saying and that many people are replying to call you the kind of names people call each other on X, that really suggests that you went in the wrong direction.
Now, Vincent, Niall Collins, as I said, he went on RT radio yesterday and said there's never been anything happen down there. Everything's great. They haven't polluted. They haven't broken their licence. But we have a Senator, Jerry Craughwell, in the Irish Parliament, who has been, I suppose, a controversial figure in his own right over the years in terms of his support for Ukraine. He's very, very, very supportive of Ukraine. He always has been. But unfortunately for Niall Collins, there's a newspaper article from 2015, 11 years ago, on Limerick Live. We put it up on our Substack by a guy called Colin Ward, right? The basic gist of it is, Aughinish has insisted it has never caused any environmental damage to the Ashkeaton area that it operates in. And it operates to the highest health and safety standards. They will argue against us all bloody day, right? In 2002, 500,000 litres leaked into the Shannon estuary. That's a fact. It's black and white, okay? Porcupine number one, Niall Collins told. But Senator Jerry Craughwell made comments in the Shannon he claimed there had been several spills on the site and that some employees had suffered damage to their eyes as a result of being splashed with caustic soda. Now, I've interacted with caustic soda before in the past, and it will burn the hands off if you've touched it. It's highly toxic. And how does Jerry Craughwell know this, Vincent? He used to work there.
Wow. Okay.
So here we have a national politician, a senator, 11 years earlier, directly contradicting what Niall Collins said on RT radio yesterday. Okay? He said he worked in fire and security there, Jerry Craughwell did, to put on chemical suits and look after employees when there was a spill. every 200 metres on site, there's a shower in case employees splashed with caustic soda, which is brought in by the truckload every day. If a person is splashed with caustic soda, it will burn right through. Employers had to stand naked under a shower for 20 minutes until they were collected by an ambulance and brought to a medical centre. There were people who lost their eyesight. In one case, lost one eye. There have been several spills on the site. Now, how did Niall Collins not know this? And we spoke about this earlier, right? Or in your earlier podcast, that Crockwell also pointed out the plant was built on a limestone base, which is about as porous as a sieve.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's about as porous as me after a couple of pints. And there's a rubber lining there in at the plant, but if the lining goes, you kind of have no idea where the toxins and the red mud will go. Jerry Crockwell also said he cited an instance where geese had been brought from Canada to Aughinish. And he says, as far as I recall, caustic soda burned the feet off the geese and they had to be put down.
Jesus.
Right? I'm not pulling this from my backside, okay? This is on limerickleader.ie, okay? It's all there, black and white for everybody to see. We'll put it up on our Substack. So again, is Niall Collins not on top of what's going on down there? Does he not know? Well, what's going on here? He's either being incredibly ignorant or incredibly disingenuous. It's one of the two.
Absolutely seems that way, for sure.
This stuff is like nuclear waste. It's going to be there for generations. There's no getting rid of it anytime soon. And we've spoken about this previously. There's a lot of murky stuff going on about the awarding of licenses. They've been trying to expand the plant, but they've been knocked back every single time now. And the most recent, I suppose, setback for the plant is a judge insisted on Commission Planala, which is the planning commission, falsified records in Aughinish alumina case. It appears that they used the AI to hallucinate some results for them that didn't exist and stuff like that.
Wow, okay.
So it's beset by scandal after scandal after scandal. But Niall Collins went on the radio yesterday and you would swear they were down there making chocolate for Willy Wonka's factory. And his response on X was nothing short of appalling. I mean, he showed utter contempt for the people of Ukraine. And he will contest this, of course, and say that we can't prove that there's material going into the weapons for Russia's war machine. But if you were to ask him, is there an acceptable level of material from Aughinish? Well, what's an acceptable level? Would be 10%, 20%, 30%, 30% of 100,000 tons? Is there ever an acceptable level? He's getting a lot of blowback. There's been a lot of comments. Have you read some of the comments, Vincent?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, there's some good ones.
Existing as the prostitute of a Russian dictator is no way to go through life, son. We must point out that Niall Collins is not a prostitute, and he will tell you that he has nothing got to do with Russian dictatorships or the like, in the interest of balance. But a lot of comments along those lines. He's getting ratioed pretty bad. Some of the comments I'm not going to read out because they're quite frankly defamatory and libelous, but it's a case of, I wonder, did he do that on purpose? So everybody's talking about him. Everybody in the area knows that he went out to bat for Aughinish, and it can't be denied that he didn't go out to fight for the plant. And everybody's seen it now. And is this a Machiavellian way of keeping a seat?
I don't know the dynamics of that area kind of well enough. You would also think that there are some people in the area in his constituency who would look at that reply and be quite dismayed by it, even if they were kind of generally pro-Aughinish or wanted to see the jobs protected. Being that dismissive of a local concern, I don't think looks good.
No, it doesn't. Part of me is deeply cynical, and that's his way of saying, to the people of Aughinish, I have your back here in terms of trying to keep the plant open.
Yeah. I will say, to me, quite honestly, it just looked like a Twitter interaction. Somebody says something that irritates you, and sometimes it irritates you because they're right or they strike a nerve, as we say here. That was my initial impression. I don't have any evidence for it, but it felt much more like the reaction you get on social media as opposed to something pre-planned. The flip side is, if you are a brilliant politician, that's how you perhaps would make it look, right?
I think there's nobody within the media infrastructure in Ireland that could describe Niall Collins is a brilliant politician.
Fair.
Okay. His Wikipedia controversies page is a bit longer than his actual biography in politics.
Yeah, we have a few of those here. Controversies is 5,000 words. Bills passed / accomplishments is 3 sentences. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think he has in his profile that he's still the Minister for State for Justice, which he's not. He's the Minister for State for Culture and the Marine. So the timing is terrible also because his party leader, Micheál Martin, is in Kiev today meeting with President Zelensky. And I wonder, are some journalists going to stick a microphone in Micheál Martin's face and go, have you seen what Niall Collins said about President Zelensky?
Yeah.
You know, and what he thinks. So he's yawning at the people of Ukraine, showing contempt for them.
Just a quick update here. Between recording and publication, we did get word on Micheál Martin's comments in Kiev at a press conference with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Martin towed the party line, so to speak, on the idea that the Irish government has been able to neither prove nor disprove the allegations that alumina from Aughinish is going into the Russian weapons supply chain. Martin was a little more forceful in saying that Ireland does not want alumina from Aughinish winding up in Russia at all, it appears, he says, from news reports. Overall, I don't think anything he said really changes our analysis here. A full report has not even been completed yet. That is well behind schedule. But overall, Martin's comments today certainly do not sound like a repudiation of what Collins has had to say or of the broader line from the Irish government so far, which is basically that they want to try and find a middle ground to, as Tull likes to put it, speak out of both sides of their mouth. And it suggests that the jobs in the area remain a substantial priority for Fianna Fáil and for the Irish government.
There's a video doing the rounds also that very famously Caelan, who took the samples from Aughinish. Collins tells him there's no Russians working here, and Caelan says to him, so why is there Russian signs all over the local area? And Collins says, I don't know. And kind of like, come on. They're not putting Russian signs down there for the likes of me or American tourists. Like the Russian signs are down there for Russians that are visiting the area. Now, Vincent, as we're recording, it's 4:30 West Cork time. Niall Collins still has not replied to me. He still not has corrected the record. Okay.
Right.
I don't know, has he spoken to Jerry Crockwell about what he's seen in Aughinish? Because what Jerry Crockwell says is directly contradicting what Niall Collins has said. And the whole of pro-Ukraine social media is out with their burning torches to lynch them.
Yeah.
So if he's seen anywhere outside of Limerick, I'd imagine very much he'd want to look over his shoulder because he's after upsetting a lot of people. Okay?
Yeah.
Being flippant, being dismissive. Now, what did he think was going to happen when he sent me the yawn emoji? Was what was Tull going to do? I was going to sit there and go, yeah, you're insulting me. Okay, pal, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But also, as we've spoken about plenty of times on the podcast before, he can't very much come out and apologise now, can he?
No, social media really does back you into a little bit of a corner with that, whether you're a politician or not. It's really, really hard to pull that off.
Yeah, you don't. The psychology of social media is that if he came out and said, look, I'm really sorry for being so flippant, so dismissive, forgive me, please, that would go even more viral. There'd be more people.
Yeah, I think so.
You don't get out of that alive.
No.
I mean, but you see with American politicians all the time, there's no grey area, there's no allowing for nuance. The reality of the situation is Niall Collins has to be seen to come out and look after his constituents' interests, even if it's against the national and international interests of Ireland and Europe. He has to be seen to protect his little corner of Ireland and what we like to call parish pump politics in Ireland. And what she called in the United States pork barrel politics, is it?
Yep, pork barrel. Yeah, although parish pump politics, pork barrel politics usually don't include yawns. That might be the one piece of political advice I would give to Collins going forward. If you really want to come out as somebody who's fighting for your constituents and fighting for jobs, I'm not sure the yawn emoji is quite the best way to galvanize enthusiasm for your re-election campaign.
Yeah, look, there's a feeling in Ireland we're kind of, a little bit unhappy and underwhelmed by our government's response to the war in Ukraine, even though, as I've said before in the podcast, we've taken in these, 60,000 Ukrainian refugees on one hand, but on the other hand, we're giving Russia their war materials to force them to become refugees,
Yeah, that does sound very Irish from your description over the last 9 months of how the Irish government plays things. Not what I would have expected after doing 60-odd episodes.
I wrote about this before. You have to have a skill in Irish politics that's talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Right.
You will not survive unless you master that skill. Now, as we're recording this, I'm looking at it live on one of these ship navigation websites. Ship Radar is called, Vincent. The Aristo is carrying 8,714 tons of alumina to the Russian war economy, even as we speak. It's sailing out, it's going up the estuary there at the moment. These are real world consequences. And for all Niall Collins is yawning on social media, people are dying in the Ukraine. Families are being polluted around Aughinish. The farmers around Aughinish are suffering terribly. And all he can do is give a yawn on social media.
Yeah.
That's where our political discourse has come to. Long gone are the days of brilliant debates. There's a great book by John Drennan, a Daily Mail journalist, and his book is called 50 Dáil Speeches That Shaped Irish Politics. And if you're interested in Irish politics, or how low or how far the standard of political rhetoric has come, I'd urge people to buy that book and read it. And the politicians that inhabit our political sphere at the moment, that's not unique to Ireland, as you know yourself, Vincent.
No, there's an equivalent thing to what you're saying that people in America say quite often is you can go on YouTube and watch presidential debates from not that long ago, you know, even going back to the 1990s. And you look at the level of discourse then to where it's gone now. Even if you exclude Trump in 2016 repeatedly referencing the size of his manhood and things like that, just the level of discourse, the quality of the responses, the detail that the politicians have. It is actually really stunning. As is the case, so many things we discuss here, that these things all run in parallel. There's very few things that are unique to Ireland or to the US for that matter. Yes.
The discourse has dropped dramatically in the Dáil or Irish Parliament at the moment. Sometimes they just get up and shout. They're not even speaking. They're not speaking. They're not talking. They're just shouting across the Dáil chamber. And the discourse has been reduced to emojis on X, Vincent. This is where this is where the political discourse is.
Except here. No emojis. No yawn emojis. That's our promise to listeners going forward. No yawns.
No yawns. Okay, Vincent. This has been the second week in a row that Tull has got a politician ratioed by accident. Or maybe not by accident, who knows. So we'll go for the hat trick next week, shall we?
That's good, yeah. Yeah, next Friday we'll see who you've pissed off.
Yes. And it's only a matter of time then before I'm cancelled, of course. So,
for sure.
I'm Tull from the Irish Politics Newsletter.
And I'm Vince Martin from Wall Street in Maine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.